There's a place I'll always cherish neath the blue Atlantic skies, where the shores down in Cape Breton bids the golden sun to rise, and the fragrance of the apple blossoms sprays the dew-kissed lawn, back in dear old Nova Scotia, a place where I...
Hey guys, welcome back to All Outdoors Nova Scotia. I'm your host Robert. I don't know if you can see me very well with the light. It's raining. They're calling for possible thunder and lightning this afternoon. It hasn't started raining yet. It's kind of heavy mist. So I'm back at the four-wheeler project today. Why not? I got nothing much on the go, and I do want to get it done. So I did manage to tape up my connections earlier this morning, and put the fuel filter, replace the fuel filter like I said it was, and cut back that little hose because it's way too long. So that much is done. But yeah, I moved it a little closer because with no light in the garage, I can't see very well with it back there. So I moved it closer to the door so I could get more light. But there's the connections I got all taped up for this relay, and I finished double check the connections on my switch, but I just moved it a little closer. As you can see now, since I moved it, how that wheel leans, that's because that bearing's bad. So I got to get that changed. I got to get that bearing or that braking system back on. There's no brakes in there in the drum, so that's causing that to lean in the back. But for today, I'm going to tackle getting the new, I bought a new throttle cable because that one is broken, seized and stuck, and then when I went to push on it, it let go in this lever. So I'm going to change out put the new throttle cable on, which I bought over here, and try and get the carb on so that I'm not taking the wheels off, because I have to be able to move it back and forth right now to get the ride-on out, because if not, I can't get out and mow the lawn if I need to, or use the ride-on to get around the yard right now to do yard work. But yeah, so I'm going to see if I can get at least the carb geared up, throttle cable, choke cable hooked back up into the carburetor anyway, and get the carburetor in place, because like I said, it's a bit of a tight squeeze. I'll show you here. This carburetor has a side mount right here, which the old carburetor did not. So when I put it down in place, hard to do with one hand, but it comes up against the frame, as you can see. I don't know if you can see it actually, but it's right there, touching that bar. So I don't have a lot of room to get that side plate in after it's in the rubber. So I'm going to have to put the throttle cable through, hook it up, put the side plate on, put the choke cable in, goes in right there, and then put it down in place and into the boot right there, because I'll get down here. Maybe you can see it better when I do it this way, maybe not, but when I go to put it down in, as you can see, that frame kind of blocks any access to putting the side cover on, see? So I got to do all that and then put it down in place. Not a big deal. It still sits low enough that I can put the seat and everything back in, and the air breather, and I should have any problem getting the exhaust in. I think it runs alongside. I haven't really looked at where everything runs yet. But yeah, also on a good note, while I was digging out parts for my four-wheeler, I found the young fella's key that I couldn't find. It's been missing since we moved. So now, with the rectifier that I bought all wired up, it's over there actually, I got to put it on the bike. Then I can use either the lawnmower battery or my four-wheeler battery to test it, see if I can get his running, and make sure it's charging the battery correctly. If that's the case, then I can pick up the inner tube for this tire on his machine, which is right here, that has gone completely flat and pulled away from the rim, and get him a battery, and then it's just a matter of putting the plastic back, snapping it back in place, and putting a few screws in that they've taken out. When I bought it, it's missing a few plastic bolts and stuff. Nothing serious. I can make bolts and put them in, and then he's got a little machine that he can run around on. I'll have to test the brakes on it. It's never driven since I bought it. They blew the rectifier in it, and I bought it that way. So, fingers in the way. Sorry, guys. We'll see if I can possibly get his running while I'm on vacation as well. I'm sure he'll be happy to see that up and going because he's never had a chance to drive it yet. But stay tuned. I got to set the camera up so that you can see me work and I can free up these hands because, as you saw there, it's a little hard to maneuver the camera and put stuff in. So stay tuned. All right, guys. I went ahead and took off the old auto cable and ran the new one while I was setting up the camera. Sorry, it's shaking a little bit. I got it on a little arm there, and it's not stable right now. I hooked up the new cable. It's pretty straightforward. You just take out the two screws that hold it to the handlebar. They're in the bottom. It just fits in a slot. I don't know how well you can see that, but it fits in the slot and then goes in. You just put it back in here. I had to rotate it underneath the frame here, so then you can hook it into the other end of the carburetor. But the throttle cable is technically on. I'm just doing the last little bit here now, putting the screws back in. There's a little rubber grommet. I don't know if that's part of that. I think it is to keep the water out, but get that in place. Then you just come underneath here. They're just a Phillips screw. Get them started. You got to be careful. This is just cast aluminum. It's not very strong. So don't over tighten these when you put them back in because you will bust the cast or strip it. Just get them in tight enough that you can't move the lever. The lever doesn't move on its own, or the arm, because you don't want it flopping around when you're driving. Get them in, get them started, get them hand tight, adjust it where you want it for comfortability, for hitting the lever. That should be good there. Tighten it, but like I said, be careful, don't over tighten it because you will bust it. There, the lever's solid. Now these carburetors come pretty set up. I went ahead, ran it under, hooked it in. It just follows the slot, pretty simple. This cable does not fit this carburetor very well, so I may have to put some silicone in there just to keep the water out. But as, I don't know if you can see, hopefully you can, but it does move the butterfly correctly, nice and free. My next step will be to hook up the choke cable, which is right here, into the carburetor, and then I can start putting the carburetor in place. Pretty straightforward. That's a replacement of a throttle cable on one of these. Now yours might be different because you'll probably have the factory carburetor, in which case you don't actually have to take the carburetor off. You can, there's room to get by the frame. It's a tight squeeze, but you can actually do it without taking it off, to hook the new cable in and get the old cable out. But where I have the aftermarket carburetor, I'm now just installing it, so it's off. It's easier this way for me because I have such a tight squeeze, as you saw earlier. So I'm going to have to readjust the camera again so that you can get a better view of me hooking up the choke cable. And I'll bring her back as soon as I get the camera set up.
There's a place I'll always cherish neath the blue Atlantic skies, where the shores down in Cape Breton bids the golden sun to rise, and the fragrance of the apple blossoms sprays the dew-kissed lawn, back in dear old Nova Scotia.